Got a very interesting topic lined up, actually, and some wonderful... Look at these guests. Wow. We're here to talk about the Guild Wars 2 economy. Of course, we've had some pretty major events happening there that obviously impact the economy. New expansion, a whole bunch of new rewards, new farms, new everything.
A lot of material prices have been dropping, and for some players that's not a big deal. Some players that is a big deal. Kind of depends on what you want to spend your gold on and where you're getting your gold from.
Because right now, infusions are I would say a very major part of the ultra endgame in terms of cosmetics, right? These are highly coveted items, but weirdly enough, I feel like if you're a normal player, you might never encounter the infusion system.
They should add, I would like them to add something where you kill Chalk Garrett, oh, you didn't get the jackpot reward, you didn't get the Chalk infusion, you get a token. And once you get a certain number of these tokens, 500 tokens, let's say, you could go to a merchant and you could get an account-bound version of a Chalk. Well, I guess we could talk about World vs. World changes after the next topic, because I think I know what topic you want to bring up.
Yeah, okay, yeah, all right, here we go then. Let's talk about AFK farming. All right then, here we go. It's tea time. How's everyone doing today? Got a very interesting topic lined up, actually, and some wonderful... Look at these guests. Wow. We've got a crown here, an ectoplasm. We've got some scales. I mean, this is some serious business. Like, this is some big gaming right here. But anyway, we're here to talk about the Guild Wars 2 economy. Of course, we've had some pretty major events happening there that obviously impact the economy. New expansion, a whole bunch of new rewards, new farms, new everything. It's a different world out there right now, and here to help us unpack that, we have got none other than Guild Enko, and Abri, some very, very wealthy players who know exactly how all of that works. So, welcome to the show, everyone. And actually, yeah, I appreciate that. You know, see, that doesn't happen very often. You know, we actually get a reciprocation there. I appreciate that, A man of manners. Okay, I like that. But actually, to kind of open this up, this tea time was partially inspired by some of your YouTube videos that I watched, actually, Abri. And I would love it if you could kind of give us a bit of an introduction to kind of where we are right now with the Guild Wars 2 economy and what exactly is going on.
I'm assuming you're referring to little tiny clickbait title.
Yeah,
Video, it was titled
the biggest
economy problem. Yeah. The way that I see it and saw it when I made that video, what I wanted to get across was that a lot of material prices have been dropping, and for some players that's not a big deal. Some players that is a big deal. Kind of depends on what you want to spend your gold on and where you're getting your gold from. To me, a lot of it has to do with materials inflating, like the volume of materials being higher across the board than they've ever been. And I think that if the trajectory that has occurred the past 6 months kept continuing, that it could be dangerous for the game. But that being said, I don't think it's in a super bad spot right now. I don't think it's I think a lot of people thought that I was a doomer, as you call them, because of that video. I got a lot of like messages and comments that were like, "Oh, it's fine, everything's fine," and like I'm still enjoying the game. Like I told you before we started, like I came back to playing the game recently, and I've been having a great time of it. So like, game's not dead. It's just it's something that I think a lot of people were sort of wondering, like, what causes this, what can fix this, and it's a simple supply and demand equation for the most part. It's the way that I see it.
Okay. Do we all broadly agree with that statement, with the assessment of where we are? Okay.
I think so too. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Part of the big problem with why material prices are dropping is because there's no sinks. There's no recurring sinks for these materials. So when you have players that are farming, doing some possible not quite legitimate stuff, also, the materials never go away. Like, if they're not being consumed at the rate they're being generated at, so obviously the prices are going to drop. And one of the things that I do think they need to add is some kind of recurring sink or some kind of ongoing sink that is always available to convert items into something else. Like, add in some kind of gambler. It was nice when the Mystic Forge recipes were here, or the the global events where you were turning in mithril, but that only lasted for a short time. They do need something that is recurring to consume these materials.
Okay. And
I actually want to rewind it just to give context, actually.
let's do it.
This was at a time where in 2022 we had the expansion come out, right? And for an expansion, naturally, people tend to hoard a lot of their items, right? In either in speculation of what they can make money out of, or just to save them to whatever they need to spend it on in the expansion, they'll spend it on. And when the UD comes out, it honestly did not have the best of syncs. Actually, it was just the Gen 3s are okay, but it's telling that the Gen 3s are much cheaper to make than the Gen 2s, and they made them very accessible. There's a positive there that anyone can go get it. Very easy compared to the other two. Negative is that it's the material lineup for these items. It's so spread thin, which is the reason why it's easy to even craft, because the materials that you consume on it are very minuscule compared to the Gen 2 and Gen 1 in a sense. So naturally, the fallback hits harder, especially when there's no follow-up immediately after. And I think it's fine because in the same year, there was a lot of cleanup, you could say. 2022 was a really, touch up the game and do a lot of other QOL things that don't put exactly what you would define new content. So the notice of all of this suddenly happening is much more noticeable, right? And I think that's where it puts us into where we're here and getting into this kind of conversation where this is become a topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that this, kind of happened with Ender Dragons. Is this something that's been almost a little bit unique to Ender Dragons, or have there been similar issues in the past with stuff like this happening with regards to syncs? Like, basically, what was different in, say, Path of Fire or Heart of Thorns, where things didn't quite turn out this way, or did they? And maybe I just wasn't paying attention.
So the Gen 2 legendaries was purely, hey, if you have enough gold, you could get them. Because the only thing you really needed to farm were the shards, and you got that with volatile magic. That was the only thing you needed to farm. Everything else is just having a massive amount of mithril and in Elderwood. In Gen 3 for EUD, the big shift that happened was the big sink, the big obstacle for Gen 3 legendaries. You have to farm like antique summoning stones. You have to get like the lamplighter badges. You have to get what else was there that was kind of annoying?
Ambergris.
The Imperial the freaking notes.
Yes, the research notes.
Imperial favors. Well, even research notes is just gold. Imperial favors, though, the only way you can get Imperial favors is by farming events in EOD. So there's no way to get those things with just like, hey, I have a bunch of gold, let me go buy something that I can get Imperial favors for. You have to do events. So there was a big shift from Gen 2 to Gen 3, where Gen 2 was just farming, have a lot of gold, and you could skip a lot of farming by having a lot of gold. Well, Gen 3s, you had to farm. There was no other way around it except for farming. So, and then when they released the variants, people complained about the high research note cost, right? And then so they nerfed it. I actually think they shouldn't have nerfed it, because if these are supposed to be long-term goals, it also would have kept prices going for a little bit to have the research notes like that. It just would have been a big longer-term goal as it was. And with EOD, their big idea for a material sink was research notes, and they nerfed it almost right away.
Yeah,
I'm hoping we'll see a return of that again in like future releases, Living World, whatever. That research notes aren't one of those ANET things that just gets introduced and then forgotten.
Yeah, that's ANET's problem. They need to be able to reiterate on, or like they need to iterate on their ideas. Like they always have really good ideas that are good, but they're not great. And with a little bit of refinement, they could become great.
Yeah. I think this is a very big point of interest overall, just to talk about and point out, actually, is that I think players perhaps don't quite realize just how much of a backbone of the economy legendaries are, right? They really are pretty much the thing where all the materials end up going, in one way or another, right? Like, they are these massive sinks that definitely kind of dictate the flow of to an extent, like how some of the economy works at the very least there, which I think is very interesting to actually think about, just as a point of interest there. And yeah, research nodes are an interesting thing, of course, because, you know, I think that if you look at them at first, you go like, what the hell is this? But it was a very deliberate choice, of course, a very tactical thing by ArenaNet to try and deal with this problem, because this is fascinating, right? With the way the Guild Wars 2 economy works. Guild Wars 2 faces a problem that I think other MMOs perhaps don't face quite as much, is that stuff doesn't get used up. There's so much stuff that's account bound. There's so much stuff that is permanent and is best in slot forever. It's not like you have to replace your helmet with a slightly better helmet that you can make down the line or you can drop down the line. There aren't a lot of things that actually get consumed. And to be honest, I guess over time that's only increased, right? Because now we have infinite legendaries, right? Because of the legendary armory and so on. So even less things are getting consumed over time as players begin to progress through these systems. It's quite difficult for ArenaNet to actually get rid of stuff, because more and more players are playing, you know, and the more people play, the more stuff they get, and it's got to go somewhere, right? You know, it's funny to think about, right? But of course, you know, that piece of rare unidentified gear that you buy, yes, someone else actually dropped it. It's not like magicked out of thin air. It actually existed, right? Someone found it, and now you've got it, I guess, if you're buying it, or, you know, you sold it to someone else if they're buying it, which is very, very interesting, I think. So what are some things that ArenaNet should be looking at doing to perhaps deal with this? Because, of course, you know, we mentioned research notes as like a system they could iterate upon. Are there any other key features, perhaps from other expansions or past releases, that would alleviate this problem?
Well, what I said in the video, as you probably know, was pretty simple. Shiny crap. Like people like their shiny crap, and if you make it, instead of maybe an achievement skin set or something, you make it to where you need to forge, you need to make, you know, whatever you need to make to get these things. It becomes a thing where people hold on to those materials. They don't dump them onto the TP and lower the prices even more. They actually want to save them. They want to use them. People are buying them because they want to craft, you know, a skin or like an exotic weapon set. Think like the volcanic weapons, things like that. If those, rather than being dropped or bought with currency, if those are craftable with items, then you sink a lot of items, especially if you put a collection behind it. You know, like it's, and people love their shiny crap, so it's a lot easier to motivate people to actually make those things, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that.
They actually have a very good, like, the crafting system is not bad in this game, and I feel like they don't actually use much of it. Because yeah, once you're done with those, you could say very simple sort of items, and then once you've gotten past the thing of crafting the Ascended, and you just go and play content, eventually you can get it. It kind of leaves the whole system by itself, where it's only touched upon if you just sort of have materials that you forget because you keep depositing them into your bank. You find out, oh, you know what, I can just refine this, and then it goes into the next thing. So it becomes a thing where it's used for 10%, and the 90 other percent of things that you could go with it, that whole system there is just, it's untouched, except by, you know, people who even bother to be in that kind of or kind of try and get into that stuff if there is anything worth doing. So yeah, like Abree said, I think if you introduce, you know, people always talk about introducing something shiny, whatever, make people work for it. It's a mix of also having systems like crafting, the forge in place. They're already there. That you don't have to build this. It's there, and make use of it, right? I think at the end of the day, if the skin is really nice, it's if an exotic or an ascended, someone will go for it because it's a look. There's a whole community that cares about literally fine tuning like how they look like for fashion shows. And there's a lot of people who certainly do actually put some time into just making the character look pretty, right? But if you have these systems in place, then people go and they actually interact with said systems.
Yeah. So I mean, if we take a note, like Aubrey said on our little like pre-talk, how like mobile games are making so much money right now. If you take like something from mobile games, and I've unfortunately have been playing a few mobile games recently. One of their big things they do is that like you get a champion, to upgrade it, you have to get multiple copies of that champion to then upgrade it to the next level. So if you take that idea and kind of see how that could work in Guild Wars 2, I would do it with just fashion. Like, you don't do it with stats. Like, best in slot stats we have with Ascendant right now, leave it like that. That's fine. But you can have it where you can, like what Aubrey was saying, you could upgrade your fashion wars into higher tiers, like make it more shiny. Like, one of the ideas that I talked about was like, how do you get people more into raids or like repeatable content to be worth it? Well, like have things that drop from those places that you get the skin, and then you have to get like 5 more copies of that skin from that boss to then upgrade it to the next tier, and then you need 20 more copies to get to the next one or something like that. So it's a little bit of that. I know, like, when you have to spend money to do that on a lot of the mobile games, it's kind of annoying. But if for Guild Wars 2 is if it's like if you can farm a boss, like if there was a special skin for Veil Guardian that you got it, you got one of them, you got the skin. If you want to get the next tier, you need to get 5 copies of it, and then you need to spend a bunch of materials or gold to get it and stuff like that. And it can continue to upgrade. You could have multiple tiers for it. Every 3 months or something, they could release another tier for it, and this will drive people to do raids more often. This will drive people to like go farm more because you need materials to upgrade it. So they do need something that will cater towards. I would say you could kill 2 birds with one stone with this, where you can get people to do old content again and want to do old content repeatedly. Also remove like the weekly lockouts on those rewards, so people can farm Veilguard as much as they want. And also introduce a material sync that's ongoing that will help out with these prices. But that is the big problem. We're not consuming the material at the same rate. MM brought up the Mystic Forge. Bring back like the unlock quest for Mystic Forge recipes, like the community event. You throw in this much mithril in the Mystic Forge, this Mystic Forge recipe will become unlocked. Stuff like that.
Yeah, because I believe that kind of community events like this have actually been quite important. I think the one that comes up, which it does make me chuckle a little bit actually, is of course Festival of the Four Winds, right? This is basically your yearly scam, basically, where ArenaNet just says, you know what, you can have these little gamba boxes and have a 1 in a billion chance of getting a chark, right? And everyone always takes the bait. They always go for it. Unbelievable.
I got 4 this year.
It's not gambling if you write it down, man. It's just data collection at that point.
Yeah.
But it works, right? Like it's people actually engage with it, and it's nice to see people who actually try to go like, the next one's gonna be the one. The same with ecto gambling. People, like they just want to throw their money away. There's a reason to spend, right? And that festival is actually somewhat okay, and it came at a good time because I'll tell you why. And I know what your point is later, because we talked about that, and I'll let you go. When EOD dropped, there was a common problem. I think I addressed this, before I disappeared. But even I'm sure Enko, Abri, and anyone else that was talking about it was that hopefully there is a continuation of reasons to spend anything that you have, because it's an expansion. People will save up. And people were like, oh my God, everything's at an all-time high. But that's just natural based on where the game was at the time. Expansion drops. And yeah, the Gen 3s in terms of accessibility is great. But for anyone who pays attention and knows, like, long-term, this is definitely might get us to where we are now. There needs to be a follow-up. In the same time, we had 4 Winds, which is a great follow-up in a way, because that whole event is catered to sinking materials into boxes where you can just gamble away for your chance of an infusion. And it kind of mitigates a little bit of that, like, pressure that could happen later. And I know Enko's gonna, so I'll let you go ahead, Enko, because it also kind of, in a way, put a little bit of a perspective into new players who came into the game. So Enko, I know what you want to say, you want to take.
Okay, so let's talk about 4
The
Winds.
Unleash.
I remember Teapot at the time was saying, this is the biggest scam. Like, it sucks for everybody. Nobody should participate. And I turned around and said, like, this is like the best festival for me. Honestly, because I prepped like 5 months in advance. I didn't buy anything off the trading post during 4 Winds. Like, it was all from material saved up. So if you do it right, yes, you can do it successfully and not like waste a lot of gold. But the big problem with 4 Winds, why a lot of people consider those boxes a scam, it's a lot of it's perception. Because if you guys look at the drop rewards from those boxes, and you look at the super rare category, you got some items in there that are absolutely garbage. Like they actually need to take the crappy stuff out of the super rare category, because how much does it suck when you open a box and you drop a super rare recipe of Lissa, and it's like that could have been a chalk. That could have been a chalk infusion. So people see that and they're like, I'm not going to risk all this to do that. So if they move all the cheap stuff to like the rare category and they added in other infusions into the super rare category, and then they also adjusted the prices for the boxes, you would get more people who are like, hey, I actually want to try this. And they could actually make the average net worth of the boxes internally completely the same. The difference is, though, a lot of it's perception on the player base. They see the drops, and they're like, oh, those actually look like it might be really good. I will participate. And this is actually true for Halloween and for Winter's Day also. If you look at the super rare category for a lot of the gamble boxes, they look bad. Like the jackpot prize doesn't look good. So some of it is, again, just perception. Move the crap items out of the jackpot tier, and I think a lot more people would participate.
Interesting.
Yeah, Shiny. I'm going to address the comment I just said. So I understand that they had different drop rates in the super rare tier, but the problem is most people don't know that. They're seeing it as common, uncommon, rare, and super rare. Okay, so move the more common stuff in super rare to the rare tier. So the super rare tier is purely like the jackpot items.
And I was seeing a few very interesting ideas actually in the chat, talking about like adding more stuff to guild halls, player housing as an expansion feature down the line. And I was kind of thinking on this, like, do you think that it would actually potentially be a net benefit for ArenaNet to say add or create like a few of these types of items, stuff like mounts, for example, as well, right? Like mount skins, maybe some of the other like semi-gem store stuff that's been around, like kind of throw that into some of these chests, or potentially add some variants of these that are big material sinks on the game. So for example, I think, you know, the Guild Rider Warclaw, right? Now, of course, this is not exactly the same thing, but to unlock the reward track, you had to pay 200 gold, right? So, you know, I imagine their goal there to an extent was, okay, it's going to be a bit of a gold sink for everyone who wants to go and get this. In some sense, it's a bit like buying gems, right? Because, you know, gold and gems are kind of the same thing. So they want you to have to spend something to obtain this in some way. Do you think it would actually be valuable for ArenaNet to actually do something similar, to drain stuff out of the economy by offering these kind of very coveted, very highly enjoyed reward types to various areas of the game?
I think it would be. Yeah, I think it would be valuable. My big thing when it comes to stuff like that is being sort of realistic about what your expectations are, because it's really easy to sit here on Discord, on Teapot stream, and be like, they should add this, they should add that, they should add whatever. But Arena, that's like, that's a job we have to post. Like, people have to be paid to do this. It's dev time that gets taken away from designing other things, from designing gem store items, which are direct revenue for them. So I think it's valuable, but at the same time, I think you also have to be realistic about how much of that you expect. I think it would almost be more valuable if ArenaNet could take something that they're already planning on releasing. Like, you know, if they're already planning on releasing a skin set or an infusion or something like that, go ahead, take that, use that as an opportunity to make it a material sink. Don't just make it a roulette drop, make it a material sink. You don't have to put any more time into developing it. It looks the same. Everything's the same. You just change how you get it. Like Frost Legion, great example. If it didn't drop from the meta, would have been a great opportunity. And then if you keep adding things like that iteratively, then overall, like, they add together. You know, one on its own is not going to do much, but if you make it a integral design feature in the game, then the long-term health is greatly benefited from that, I think.
Yeah, I think that was one of your points.
Balance.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
they definitely have to balance this, right? Because their money maker definitely comes a lot from the gem store. So, but it doesn't have to be one or the other. Really, they just have to find, like, for every 5, maybe do one that's different, right? Or for every whatever that ratio is. Because if they already have the skin, then they already have it. They just need to put it into place and things like that. And what they could do is maybe do something like a mix or a match set, right? Like one goes on the gem store, but then the other half needs to be, you have to figure out things to make it.
Mhm.
And then maybe that kind of drives a little bit of engagement even to the gem store. So then there's a little bit of, one skin does recognize that there's another one that's for sale or something. So they got to play around, I think, with that formula. And I don't think there's a huge loss if they do it in that kind of step, because if they do obviously try to put way more effort into creating there's some of these collections, I remember there's some of these exotics and ascended items, they actually have like a self-contained small little bit of a NPC story, and you go out, get this, get that, and then the NPC gives you the collection. There's so many of them in the Living World seasons, right? And it's kind of nice as well. And so they could try to do what they already have and just have something that relates to the gem store. So that way it's not one or the other. That way it's, here's both options, but then they're even linked together. And that could even maybe bring eyes for someone to even go on the gem store and be like, I like that other skin. Maybe I will, spend money, or if they have the goal, just convert to gems.
Yeah. And I think this was a very key point that was actually brought up, actually, and I think has historically been brought up as well, is that some very high-ticket items, in particular, stuff like infusions, right, they're not exactly consumed. They've actually started to change this, right? This is true of the newer infusions, right? I think, namely, the Su-1 infusion, is that once you unlock it, right, you open the box, it becomes bound to you. You can't then sell it. Whereas this is very unusual, actually, very strange. Of course, if you buy a chak, you can actually say, I'm going to use it for like a year, then I'm going to get rid of it. I'm going to go sell it to someone else, right? Because it doesn't actually get locked in. And I think it will be really interesting if more of these systems essentially did consume the item, like some kind of wardrobe, for example, where, you've got a chak on your account now, and you could potentially use it on your different characters. If you, as a kind of like a trade-off for not being able to get rid of it again, well, now you can use the chak on all of your characters, and you could do this for the other various infusions and so on. And I also think systems like that, because I think this is something that we just mentioned, of course, is that if you make infusions way more kind of forward-facing, that would, of course, encourage players to go for them. Because right now, infusions are I would say, a very major part of the ultra endgame in terms of cosmetics, right? These are highly coveted items. Players often trade off-platform for them through Overflow Trading Company, for example. And, it's a big thing that people want to go for. But weirdly enough, I feel like if you're a normal player, you might never encounter the infusion system, or it might take you a very long time before you actually even know it exists, because it's weird. It's like you get these weird upgrades that you slot into your gear and it gives you a particle effect. What the hell is going on there? That's super strange, right? That's a very weird system. So reworking that and kind of putting it in front of the player saying, hey, go get this. I imagine that would also incentivize a lot of players to go for that too.
I'd actually say it's a good thing that it's so ultra endgame, because if you do go into that sort of binding infusions and being craftable, Frost Legion, that type of thing, the people who are going to be going for those aren't going to be your average player. Those are going to be your people who have already done it all, have their armory, all that, and now it's, okay, I need to do this collection, craft this infusion. But the handful of veteran players that get finally something to do because, they want something new to do, going after that infusion, that inductively benefits all the players who sell the materials that they need to buy to craft it.
Oh, just to clarify, I meant more of like having the system present as like an aspirational reward, right? Not necessarily that everyone's going to be going for it, like every single player.
Anko, we talked about this maybe a while ago, but Anko had a system of how you could do it with a merchant, and yeah, I don't know if you remember, right? Infusion.
We'll talk about infusions first. So I've been advocating for infusions in the wardrobe for a long time now, or in the armory rather. So the entire idea would be like you would have it be like mini pets. So mini pets, you can put them out on your character. If you want to add them to your wardrobe, you have to consume them. They become basically account bound. So same thing with the chalk infusion. So the problem with chalk infusions right now, or a lot of the infusions, is because they don't get consumed. They only get destroyed if somebody deletes it for some reason. somebody has one and gets banned, or someone who has one and they quit the game.
Ooh.
That's the only way that they get destroyed. So, and that includes, you know, the massive infusion of them that we had, you know, a couple years ago. So if you have the armory, if you have a chalk +5 power, it goes in your armory. If you want to have another chalk +5 power, you would have to have consumed 2 +5 chalks. Granted, there's no reason to do that because you can only stack the aura once in the same stack. But to get a +5 Condi chalk, you'd have to get one of those to consume those. So if you wanted to be able to stack 8 chalk infusions, you would need to have consumed 8 chalks of different stats on your account. You could do that for all the infusions. So this gives a way so that they get consumed, and that you know, the prices of infusions are generally just going downhill because they don't get destroyed. I also think that they should have added a mercy system to chalk infusions and other infusions of the same thing. So if you're doing chalk Garrett, and this goes back to, I think they need to let people farm as much as they want for certain things. So chalk Garrett, like, they should add, I would like them to add something where you kill chalk Garrett, oh, you didn't get the jackpot reward, you didn't get the chalk infusion, you get a token. And once you get a certain number of these tokens, 500 tokens, let's say, you could go to a merchant and you could get an account bound version of a chalk. So you can't sell it. If they have the armory, you could go to the armory and it's available on all your characters now. But so right now for the chalk infusion, it only drops from like the daily chest you can get from chalk Garrett. So this token, I would remove that daily lockout. Just have it be, you can farm chalk Garrett. If you want to be there for every single chalk Garrett every single day, you could do that. And if they have the mercy system, then you can eventually get to that 500 tokens faster. This encourages people to go back and do chalk Garrett. If they combine that with the armory system, now you're not flooding the economy with infusions because they're also getting consumed. Okay, so this encourages people to do older content instead of right now, like you see chalk Garrett's like the 2 before reset and the 2 or 3 after reset, or like during prime times, those are really busy, but there's a lot of times where like there's nothing. Now you throw in that system combined for all the other meta events. So like Tequaddle skins, every Tequaddle you have a chance to get one. More people will do Tequaddle throughout the day. You do this for like Octavine, though I guess Octavine's it's already people do it because you get a lot of chests afterwards. But this kind of system where it's like, it encourages repeating old content. And to like what Aubrey was saying about them, like, oh, new systems require more dev time. I got like one of the big things I was pushing for a while was that like some changes that they can make that would encourage repeating old content that shouldn't take a lot of dev time because the system's already in the game. So repeatable achievements, make the Veil Guardian achievement repeatable, so it tells you how many times that you've killed it. This would also solve the kill proof issue because they can make it pingable in chat without a chat code. So you can show that, oh, I've killed Veil Guardian 600 times or something like that. If they add it as a repeatable achievement, what this also does is that they can add it in the API, and now Efficiency can add it as a leaderboard. So you can have a leaderboard that shows how many times you killed Chalk Garen. You can have a leaderboard that shows how many times you killed Sabbatha. And there are people that will farm those things to be on the top of the leaderboard. Like, even if it costs them gold. And so you combine that with like the skin idea that I mentioned earlier. You do that with removing the lockouts. So this encourages people to do old content with very little, well, what I would hope is very little time investment on ArenaNet side, because the repeatable achievement system is already in the game. They just have to add, that flag to other achievements.
Okay. Very interesting. Very interesting.
These are things I would have pushed if I got hired as the economist.
Oh.
Okay. Ooh.
So,
I mean, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Because you mentioned that.
Yeah.
If we want to talk about that.
Are you hearing this, ArenaNet?
Yeah. Okay, let's go.
Man's got ideas.
I mean, yeah. I mean,
Well,
yeah. I guess that's that.
So,
Yeah. I did.
Well, okay. So to address the economist position, ArenaNet had a position posted for a senior economic designer or economy designer for like a year. That then got changed to just a normal systems designer. And in November, myself and I know one other person that I talked to had applied for that position. We both got rejection notices in November, and then that position no longer showed up on ANET's site. Okay, so We just found out from that that position. So I had thought they either filled it or they got rid of it. Turns out they got rid of it. They merged it into another system design position. So it's a person's sole job is not going to be economy designer. It got merged into another thing, and I don't think we have any idea who it is at the moment.
Well, we'll find out in a few months when there'll be some decisions made, and we'll be having this conversation. Oh, look how
We can
amazing
come back
the
for round
economy
2.
is. It's
Well,
beautiful.
I also think they might not tell us who it is because they don't want to have what happened with John Smith, where everybody was just like beating on him.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is definitely a risk, right? I think you'll be, of course, familiar with this one, actually. I go a bit of an obscure one, but I imagine you remember what happened when David Kim, the balance designer in StarCraft 2, was very forward-facing, got absolutely eviscerated. Like, probably took years off his life, actually, like, while he was actually running that. So I understand why they might want to be a little bit careful there, because obviously it is a hot topic, right? It's a really important thing, and actually that kind of leads us on to something that I should have started with. Actually, I should have opened with this one. But
Oh no.
Yeah. No, it's actually not that, not yet. Okay, not that one.
Oh, not yet.
I actually wanted to just kind of briefly ask, like, we're talking about the economy deflating and changes in the economy. Why should players care, right? Why is it a problem that the economy is deflating a little bit and there are too many materials about? Like, what are the negative effects that players might be encountering as a result of these economic changes within the game? Should have started with that one, but it's fine. We got there in the end.
I think if you're an open world only player, then your income gold wise decreases ever so slightly more than the prices of what you want to buy decrease. So I think if you're an open world only player, you end out slightly worse as a result of this. And the big problem with that is obviously there's a lot of open world only players in this game, like a lot of them. If you're a fractal player, like, prices around you are dropping, you're still getting tons of gold from the boxes, you're good to go. But if you're not, then maybe you want to think about getting into fractals, because they will get better. They are aging and aging very well reward wise as prices drop. But I don't think it's, in its current state, I don't think it's at least a situation where people need to be worried necessarily, because at the end of the day, it's a game. You play the game to enjoy it, and there's plenty of things in this game that it's almost hard to not make like 5 to 10 gold per hour doing anything in this game. Like, if you aren't role playing in Queensdale, you're making an okay amount of money for like relative to how expensive goals are to progress.
If you had an E in front of that role playing in Queensdale, you could still make 5 to 10 gold an hour.
Yeah.
I will say, I mean, if you are actually trying to play and you're doing things that technically get you gold, if you're playing and you can't get more than 10 or 15 gold an hour, and you talk about a good game plan, and your game plan is amazing, but you can't get gold, maybe you need to go back to the drawing board, because your game plan sucks. All right, there's nothing that you can't, like, there's so many things in this game that will get you gold, whether if it's directly through the material, a small karma implement, gold, silver, coppers on the side, and even whatever the map currency is of the general area you're in. I think a lot of players tend to forget what they're making because they just deposit all anyway. So they never remember what they made. And they look at all the currencies, and I think this is maybe something they could address. They could maybe fix a little bit. Is a lot of currencies. A lot of people are like, what the hell is this for? What map this belongs to? I think that's stuff that they can maybe fine tune a little bit. And I think that could definitely help people see a picture. But I think a lot of people don't know even what they're making, right? They're just playing, and then they assume they don't make much. And it's because visually it shows that you don't have much, right? Like, you open up your materials and you just see clutter, and then you deposit all and it looks pretty again. Or if you don't have space and you have to just delete stuff because, who cares about depositing? It's just a visual clutter. But they look at the number of gold and they don't see any of that increasing. And it's because there is the extra added step of, I have to go on the trading post. I have to actually sell this, list this, whatever. And it's that extra step that they don't do. And then because you don't do it until you maybe at some point go like, what do I actually have in my account? And then you get a lot of people who get revelations of oh wow, I have so much. I can actually make a legendary all of a sudden, right? And then they realize they have somewhat of things lying in their account. They tend to forget, and I think that's in hindsight, it's not the best of things in terms of how the system is placed like that. But finding a way to make people more aware of that, I think, is probably the key. Like, and letting them understand like where to look for. And with that being said, yes, definitely some simplistic form of currencies. I think there's way too many. I sometimes I don't mind it if it's a new expansion, if it's for every 5 Living World seasons, you maybe introduce 1 or 2, but for every episode and every map, you put in another new currency. That's just one extra step for someone to remember where it comes from. And then you do something where like those maps combined all can share one singular currency for that entire season. Like you're just making steps, more complicated than they have to be, right?
Okay. Do you think that UI changes? I mean, obviously, we know that they're going to try to improve how the trading post actually operates.
Yes.
And I imagine that's probably going to help. It will streamline the process, which will, of course, cause more players to engage with it, and that's good, right? Obviously. But I mean, I wonder if this would actually completely nuke the game. I have a feeling that this might be quite bad for performance, but I think it would be super interesting, especially for new players, right? Is if when they moused over an item, it would actually give them an indication of how much it would be worth if they sold it to another player. For example, right now, let's imagine we have you've got a tier 6 material. If a player mouses over that, it will show the vendor price, right? They'd have to right-click and then sell it, right, if they want to actually see how much it's worth. I think it would be very interesting if perhaps players could actually mouse over stuff and at a glance see exactly how much that item is worth. Or almost a similar, perhaps reminiscent of Guild Wars 2 efficiency in the game, where you can look at your material storage and see how much it's worth, right, in some sense. Because, I always tell new players about this and say, hey, you should go check out efficiency. You can see how much you've got. And they're always like, whoa, that's crazy. I had no idea I had like 300 gold just lying around here all of a sudden. So I think systems like this to improve that transparency could be really helpful for especially newer players, right, who are just learning to get a grips with the economy and how to engage with the trading post.
Yeah, I mean, if BlishHUD can do that, and efficiency can do that, and a bunch of other websites can do it, and the nice thing about BlishHUD, it's like it kind of mimics an in-game UI. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff with the trading post. Like I know they're switching from Coherent to Chromium, hopefully soon, because Coherent sucks. And if you don't put the proper launch tag or the tag on your shortcut, like your game could crash when the TP crashes. But like a lot of the things I would like to see with the gem store and trading post is just quality of life changes. Like Chromium should help with the speed and stability. Like I don't know if this problem is just for me or like how many other people have this problem, but my trading post crashes like a lot because there's so much stuff in the buy and sell list. It usually takes like 5 to 10 seconds to like load an item for me. I don't know if that's just me or it's because like my account's effed because there's so much crap in there. But like the gem store, for instance, like for somebody who buys all the gem store skins, it's really, really annoying. Like when they release a new item to like, is this one something I have or not? Is this a new item? I can't tell. Why can't they add a toggle so that you hide anything you already have unlocked? And if you want to see it so you can gift it to somebody else, and you can show it again. But like stuff like that, where this goes to player perceptions, this goes to ease of access. If you want more people to participate in the trading post, if you want more people to participate in the gem store, you need to make it easier for them to access it. So they've got UI designers. They need to take a hard look at how they have the gem store laid out and the trading post laid out and actually improve that. The last UI thing that we had for the trading post, for some reason, this change still doesn't make any sense. They made the arrows wiggle on the trading post. It was the only change they made to the trading post UI in the last like 6 years. Somebody spent hours coding that. Why? I don't know.
I thought I was flipping out the first time I saw that. I was like, am I seeing something? Like, is there something wrong with my eyes? Like, what the hell's going on?
It was also blurry. They made it blurry. Thank you for the follow, whoever did that, because I saw my lights flash.
Boom. There it is. The technology is there. So, you know, here's like an interesting improvement, actually. And this is, I'd be very curious what you'd think about this. Is right now there's a gold cap of 10,000, right, for anything that you can list on the training post. You think remove? Well, you saw where I was going with it. You think removing that would be a good idea? Can you explain why? Because I think it kind of improves accessibility to very high ticket items. Am I basically correct there, or is there something else going on?
It's on my list of things I would want to see on that. Just make it 200K, because that's the cap you have for the wallet. It's the most amount of gold you can have anyways. ArenaNet doesn't like sites or like places like Overflow and Exchange. They have flat out told us that they don't like people trading off the trading post. But this doesn't have as much of an impact now because there's not many items that are at 10K now. Like before, like every chalk used to be over 10K. Every Connor was over 10K. So now there's only like 2 of them that are at 10K basically. So it's not as much of an impact now, but if they had removed that cap earlier, it would have allowed high price items to actually reach an equilibrium on what people were selling them for on the trading post. And then those people could then like make a decision to trade off the trading post if they want to avoid the taxes. There's no reason to have that cap in there. I would honestly love to know why from the original developers, like why there's a 10K cap to begin with. But there's no reason for it. Just take it off.
I think that they very, very much communicated that they also don't want items to be that expensive just in general, because of them increasing the drop rates on infusions that are several years old. That was a change that happened, what, two-ish years ago? They increased the drop rates of a bunch of infusions that a few of them were above 10K. And I think a lot of that was that it's not necessarily like they have an actual problem or an issue with like off trading post trading, but like the fact that if someone gets scammed, you know, going somewhere to buy one of these infusions player to player, and then ArenaNet's like, oh, okay, we'll help you out with it. You know, you have the evidence that you agreed to this and they scammed you. Okay, well, we'll take care of that for you. But you really should use the in-game trading post. And then the player comes back with, well, I would have, but the item I wanted wasn't on the trading post. I can't get it on the trading post. And that goes to like show, you know, like your game has a very, very obvious flaw with it. Like that should not be a thing. Like if you want an item that exists in the game, you should be able to obtain it through a safe in-game system.
Well, if they remove the cap and somebody sold an item for 20K, you know, they're going to lose like 1K gold will just disappear just from the listing fee. And then another 2K gold would disappear from once it got sold. So this would also be a good gold sink too. So like, do we need a gold sink? Yes, just like you need material sinks. You need both. The trading post tax in the game is like the biggest gold sink in the game. Like if you look at every other gold sink in the game that's recurring, you have waypoint costs. Well, they actually made them cheaper, and it's like what's the highest waypoint cost you guys seen? I think 12 silver. If you go from
something like that.
Northern Shiver Peaks to EOD is like 12 silver. Brutal, like that, right? How often
There's
are
also
you
the gem exchange though. That's one that I think a lot of players forget about. Is the cut that the gem exchange takes out is actually quite big.
That's like the TP tax. It's pretty similar. But like the like if you guys actually look at how much gold you have destroyed with trading post taxes, you can't do this on efficiency, but you can do this on Silver's website. And I think last time I checked, in the last like 4 years, I've had like 450,000 gold like destroyed.
Yep, 6 figures
just from
Good
TP
job.
taxes.
Well done. You're doing your part for the game. You're sinking the gold.
You do that and if you remove the cap on 10K, you have a safe way of trading high value items, and it's still the gold sink. You can still keep it at the 5% listing, 10% sales fees. So I still see no reason to keep the 10K thing in there. If the reasoning is like, oh, we don't want items to be that high. Well, if an item is that rare, like chalks were, and also if they actually did have the armory where they got consumed and they would be bumped up in price for a little bit, you kind of would need it to go over 10K. Otherwise, you're just encouraging people to go over to Overflow and to deal with their mods.
Right,
Hey.
right.
Those are my mods you're talking about.
Oh, get your mods under control.
What? Okay, so to kind of round out this this particular topic, then, are there any other kind of key improvements that you'd like to see to the trading system within the game?
I don't think so. I think the thing that you touched on with like labeling items values, if that's doable, and the material storage, that's something that the clients people have in RuneScape do actually. Is you open your bank in that game, which has all your items in it, and it shows you at the top how much value you have in those materials. And so something people do if they're aiming for a particular goal is they'll get to the point where like, oh, I need 100 million gold. My loot tab has 105 million gold in it. I can sell this stuff and I should be able to buy whatever I want. And that improves some sort of accessibility, clarity. But I don't think there's anything better.
I
than
think
that,
just
to be honest.
reiterating, like, and I say this as someone, obviously who created Overflow with a bunch of other people. There's a misconception that if you go to Overflow, you're saving money on your tax, but that's not true. When you go on Overflow, that's not what you're doing. What you're, most people who know how to use Overflow are going there because they have X item and they want a list of items that someone else may have, and then conveniently make the trade, right? Or for any other reason, if there's something that they have, like a lot of the time was infusions or whatever it is that wasn't available on TP, the Overflow could find it for them, or Exchange, if it's still a thing, could do it for them. These other systems in place doesn't mean you'll save tax. You'll eventually pay tax. Even if you made money on the deal and you maybe got an item without having to do any of the 15% sales or anything, eventually that item goes to the trading post. You can't really game the system. Eventually you will need the gold, and the fastest way to get your gold, lots of it, is through the trading post. You can't really avoid it. So I think, yeah, if you remove the 10K cap, these systems that you have in place don't change, right? If you go to Overflow, then you still maybe want X amount of items, and this is the best place to find other people who maybe one of them wants all your items for something specific. That doesn't change what that Discord is or what Exchange is as the subreddit, right? It doesn't change that. But yeah, it improves all over trading post because it's self-contained. You don't have to leave the game. I don't have to go find this Discord. I don't have to go find this whatever, right? Like if I want to sell this item and not deal with anyone, I could just sell it in the game. But that's the key thing, I think, is just removing that cap. I think they maybe kept the cap at the time, maybe not knowing how far maybe the items were going, and then just something happened, they couldn't fix it. But yeah, I think it's about time they removed it. Definitely 3-4 years ago, that probably would have been the perfect time, because that's when infusions were really a mess. They're not so much now, but
Connor,
4 years ago,
80K. Yes,
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah,
that was a good time. That was a good time for running tournaments. You could have one counter infusion carries the entire prize pool. Unfortunate. But,
well, you know why it got to that price?
oh yeah,
because
yeah. I mean, I do know.
Yeah, for in-game, it's because of the 10K cap.
Of course,
if that 10K.
Yeah, because
that 10K cap wasn't there, it would never have gone to 80K.
Yeah, because of course, not having it sellable in game means that it's very difficult to actually determine the value of an item, right? It's essentially dictated by players, right? It's what the players say it's worth, essentially. And when you have an individual buying all of them for very high numbers, then that's what it's worth.
Don't say his name.
Yeah, well, will that summon him? Is that how it works? Like
it's like he who must not be named. Just don't say it.
One of the Discords even has a rank called Infusion Gatekeepers, because these are people, like, they were for a long time they were buying up all the chalks and stuff like that just to keep the prices high on them, like on Overflow.
Nice.
So
if you Shadow Illuminati people, dude.
Yeah.
If you put that stuff on the trading post, you can't do that anymore.
I will admit I was one of those people, but for my own selfish gains.
All right.
No, I'll be
crucify him, Twitch chat.
Listen, I'll be transparent. Yeah, I bought items at a high price and I traded them for a high price and I made money. Okay, that's the beauty of capitalism. I love it.
Meanwhile, I'm sitting over here trading like stacks of silk scraps because that's where all my gold comes from.
So yeah, it's a Giga Chad move. You know, he owns it. He embraces it. He loves it. Yeah, and yeah, but before we move on to the next topic, which will be a fun one, I'm sure. I think you were making some notes, Enko, of things that you wanted to bring up. Do you have anything, or anyone? This is an open question actually. Has anyone got any kind of additional points that you think we haven't completely covered yet or haven't brought up as of yet? Before we move on to something fun, something full of content, rich in content. Yeah. Go ahead, Games. What do you got?
Well, I guess we could talk about World vs. World changes after the next topic, because I think I know what topic you want to bring up.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. All right, here we go then. Actually, anyone else, real quick? Any other points?
Go ahead.
All right. Let's talk about AFK farming. This is probably one of the hottest topics right now. We have daily posts on the subreddit, billion posts on the forums. Everyone's going berserk. Nike just uploaded a 27-minute meme video, full expose on AFK Farmers. This is big. It's colossal. However, it's long been my suspicion that realistically, it's not the end of the world, because the Guild Wars 2 economy is pretty massive and there's a lot of people playing. And honestly, there aren't that many people AFK farming. However, I am just a pleb. So what do I know? Tell me, oh money lords, are AFK farmers destroying the game? What's the effect? What's the effect?
Go first on this.
I should go first?
Yeah, just say what you said earlier.
Well, if I say what I said earlier, I guess, well, Abri, maybe you can go after me, okay? I'm just going to say one sentence, and is that it doesn't really matter, okay? Don't cry about it.
Okay. Well, that'll be tough to follow up. To me, it's less of like, if the question is, do I think AFK farming is bad, and would I like to see it just gone from the game? The answer is yes. I don't think it's a good thing. Yes, I would like to see it not a thing, but I don't think that's because it's destroying the game or because all these material price drops. It's not because of AFK farmers. As soon as I figured out that this was going to be a topic, I went and I was curious. I went to the Abogas in Istan. I went to the Salamander Drakes in Blaze Ridge Steppes, and the Reddit's favorite spot, I think, the Ghosts in Iron Marches, I think it is. And I was actively killing them, 4 or 5 kills per kill that an AFK farmer would get. I'm getting like a few gold an hour. Like a lot of these spots make 1 to 2 gold an hour tops. Like they're not going to be killing these material prices. And if they are killing the price on T3 dust, that doesn't necessarily kill every material price in the game. I think it's more of a symptom of like something that I think is kind of sad, that people think that it's worth their effort to get another account and gear it up, put a Jade bot on it, get auto loot, whatever it is. They think it's worth their time to go and do that and AFK farm because they see gold making as being not fun or an obstacle, or like, I can't make gold and also enjoy the game, so I'm gonna do this. Because these aren't bot farms, like people aren't selling the gold that they're making from this. It's not worth doing that in Guild Wars 2. These are mostly people who, they have 10 alt accounts or whatever, they park them on a Necro and NG, and then they just leave them there. I think it's just kind of sad. Like it's kind of upsetting, because it's like my biggest thing is always, when someone asks, how do I make gold? I always start with, well, what do you like doing? Let's go from there. Let's not go to, this is the most efficient thing, because that's not what matters. And so for me, it's more of a symptom of a problem. It makes me sad that like people feel like that is a better alternative, a more enjoyable alternative than just
to playing the game
and earning it. Yeah.
Just as a quick clarification there, I think when you said bot farm, you were specifically talking about the fact that people aren't using it for RMT, right? So in other words, selling it for real money, right? I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. For the most part, it's funding that legendary.
So, some of them probably are botting, right? Or like semi-botting at least.
Right.
Like, yeah. So just to quickly clarify there, that's what was intended by that statement. Enko, what do you think?
All right. So market-wise, actually, I think it helps more people than it hurts. And when I say that, it's because those people who want to buy that stuff, its prices are cheaper for them. So it makes that stuff more easily accessible. For those of you guys that played at launch, heavy moldy bags was a big moneymaker, but it also made ancient bones 7 copper. So if you wanted T6 materials, they were really cheap to get. And that was a little bit too much, which ArenaNet addressed the heavy moldy bag issue, and it's kind of dead now. But it's like, market-wise, does it change a lot? Not really. The big issue is perception. So you have a lot of these bot farms are in generally easy locations, and they're also in low-level locations because you're trying to get like T3, T2 materials. So a lot of newer players can run into them, and it just looks bad for the game. Some of this is a result of ANET's policies always being in a very gray area. This is a problem with the macro policy. This is a problem with their quote-unquote semi-AFK policy. And I think for like a resolution on this, I think it's kind of weird that ANET's let it go on for so long when in Guild Wars 1, they fixed it pretty quickly. And they fixed it in Guild Wars 1 by having drop reduction if you kept killing the same mobs over and over and over again. In Guild Wars 1, it was harder to do that too, because whenever you left a city, it was a new instance. So they actually had something that checked that, oh, you're killing these exact same trolls outside of Darkner's Forge over and over and over again. So why can't they add something similar to that in Guild Wars 2, where it's like, if you are killing the same mobs like that respawn over and over and over again, why don't they have like less loot drop? Or they can make it more rewarding to kill other things. They already do that with XP. If a mob spawns and it's not killed, it starts accruing bonus XP. And when you kill it, you get extra XP, which for a lot of people, if you don't know, that's actually a really good gold farm because you get spirit shards. But they can make it so that if you kill the same mob, the next time you kill that same mob without killing an X number of mobs in between it, it drops 10% less. And then it drops another 10% less. He keeps doing that. Eventually, you're going to get nothing. Why can't they do that? So they already do have DR in the game for some things. Like when I mentioned they addressed the heavy moldy bags thing, that's how they did it. Because people were killing the exact same things over and over again a certain amount of time. Why that's not implemented, they got rid of that, except for specific areas. But why don't they iterate on that idea and make a better solution for that to try to tone down this? They could also clarify their semi-AFK policy, which is absolutely idiotic how they have addressed it. But again, that's to fix the perception part of it. A lot of it, economic impact for it, not a lot. It really is not a lot. The amount of materials that if you take every AFK farmer in the game and combine what they're producing, I probably make more than that in a day.
So we should ban you as well then. That's basically what I've learned from this, is that you've got to go.
ArenaNet rejected your application, and now they're banning you. That's what I think happened.
But yeah,
I think in hindsight, yeah, it is, and I think even I caught one of your streams, TeaPot, talking briefly about this. I don't know with who. Must have been Sneb, because Goose is always loose, but
the Goose is
probably.
Loose.
And it is really like, it's just not a nice look for the game, right? I think a lot of people probably brush past bots and they have no idea, by the way. I think there's people who'll go past one and they won't even know that person's not actually playing. But I think if you stand long enough in a place and see that player is literally just stuck there, then yeah, that's really where I think the concern is, at least for me, and it definitely seems the same with everyone else here. It's that it just doesn't look nice. But again, the idea that in itself is basically where the situation we are now in the whole economy is like that's just ridiculous a little bit, right? So and yeah, like Enko said, it actually does help, because if it reduces the price by just a little bit, that's actually good for you, right? You're just getting things cheaper to make your items or whatever. And again, most people, goes back to the whole thing, they don't even know what they have. They're just always depositing anyway. Most players, again, that whole argument ties up is like the complaints that it's taking away from their gold making and everything. And it's the same players who I feel like don't really check their account that often. And when they do, they're usually shocked. And even if they do know that they're always depositing things and whatever, like if if you are if you know what you need in your account, then you know where to go. If you know that you need T6 materials and you only do open world, then you already start to know, okay, I'll maybe hit Drizzlewood Coast, or maybe I'll go to the LS4 maps, or like you already know the area that you need to be in, right? So the problem is not even really to you. It doesn't even affect you in that aspect, because you already know where you need to be for whatever it is you need to get.
Yeah. And I think that you touched on something very important there, is, of course, the items that these AFK farmers typically go for are often items that aren't necessarily farmed by players, right? So in other words, players aren't necessarily generating a lot of gold by farming the same items that AFK farmers farm. So in other words, they farm an item, it goes down in price, players farm other items, and good news, that item is now essentially cheaper, right? Which is basically what you described there. So yeah, that actually works out pretty okay sometimes. It's actually very reminiscent of Guild Wars 1, actually. Although, yeah, this is a little bit naughtier. The Guild Wars 1 economy right now is actually heavily propped up by bots, right? Because people need the consumable sets, right, to do speedruns and stuff like that, because they still have an active speedrunning scene. But they're not really farmable by players because they're just ridiculously expensive. So funnily enough, Guild Wars 1, it's saved by bots. And, the AFK farmers are kind of putting the same work in here, in Guild Wars 2, I guess, to help keep some of those prices down a little bit. But yeah,
I had a lot of gold off those bots.
Ah, yes. But yeah, to be clear, of course, this is not going to be a controversial take. ArenaNet should definitely take action on this. It's not a good look. It looks super weird, right? In the game right now, especially since it's getting posted about a lot. They've got to do something about it. If it's diminishing returns, if it's changing the way auto attacking works, even so you can't like auto cast Greatsword 4 or something like that, something weird like that, or if it's changing that if you don't move or something like that, then that means that you get diminishing returns. I think the key is just making it really inconvenient or more like botting than it currently is. I think a really big issue with AFK farming is that it's actually quite easy to do without breaking terms of service. If you basically nudge it into terms of service breaking, so basically make it less of a gray area, more of like don't do this, right? This is something that we don't want you to do, then way less people are going to do it. Because right now, I think a big reason why so many people AFK farm, which, by the way, isn't even that many, of course, as previously discussed, is because people think, oh yeah, I can get away with it, right? And, I'm not going to get banned, because they actually aren't going to get banned, almost, most of the time anyway. So if you make it a bit more illegal by making it harder to do, making it require you to basically bot, right? By moving your character with a script every 5 minutes, or teleporting to a different map with a script every 5 minutes or whatever number they come up with. That's going to absolutely destroy it, because the amount of people who are going to be willing to risk their account for like 2 gold an hour per ult, no way. Right? No, maybe some people would be like unhinged enough to attempt that, but realistically, very few people would be willing to risk their account they've maybe invested years into, just to make a little bit of like very, very lazy, very, very low effort gold.
I want to, without saying too much about specific individuals, in Overflow, we recently, I'm a bit disappointed, actually. I'm very disappointed in a lot of these people, because there's been some people in Overflow who have had reports of them AFK farming, and these are people that I don't think they ever needed to do that. Certainly not. And I actually had someone who asked, why is it that you guys take action in Overflow? Because, it's like they're doing it, but like you clearly like haven't found that someone is literally sending you a mod mail ticket of this evidence, right? I mean, we have to kind of go by TOS, and ArenaNet TOS is it's against it. So we have all the information, and there's somewhat of a fine line of discussion with devs where we actually have to present them any information we have. But it's just that you say that there's people who don't want to risk their accounts. I've been disappointed by a lot of people who do risk their accounts.
We're talking like 40k AP accounts in a couple of the cases.
That's insane.
It's like, and these people have done it knowing that they would get banned from Overflow for doing it with macros, scripts, whatever they're using. It's kind of frustrating, actually. You have like friends that choose 2 gold an hour over being in the servers that you're in, and it's like, I guess we weren't friends. Like, I thought we were friends, but like, I guess not. If that 2 golden hour is more important,
Well,
but yeah, I don't know. What more needs to be said? It would be better if ANET took action on it, I think. But
yeah, for sure.
it's not killing the game.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. Maybe maybe people will stop roasting me for my takes now. See, now I brought the experts, and that was my entire plan with this tea time. Right? I was sick. I was fed up with being roasted on the subreddit for my takes on AFK farming. But now I've got the big brains, giant heads to actually tell you all.
Now it's going to be me and MM getting roasted.
That's true, actually. Yeah. I just
it's
brought you
in.
in.
Like, these guys, their friends are AFK farmers. You heard it here.
Yeah.
Well, I'm already hated, so it's like whatever, really.
Yeah.
But listen, I don't. I thought when you said the people were roasting you, I thought it was like your actual stream was roasting you. So when you had to clarify Reddit, I was like, okay, now it makes sense.
Yeah.
Reddit will roast anything.
No, I mean,
So
the stream just loves the memes. They just love that. The stream enjoys it, right? The more posts, the better. And Maguma posts, too. Oh, but yeah, go ahead, Enko.
It'd be a little different if AFK farming was generating raw gold, but they're generating materials.
Yeah.
So materials have to be sold, which actually contributes to a gold sink, right? This is why like the PvP botting was, I would say, a little bit more impactful, because that was just generating a ton of raw gold in the game. So there is that. There is that too. Yeah.
I think there are a few accounts that do this, but I guess the actual volume is not huge, right? There are some accounts that they AFK in the tournaments, right? They'll have like 5 ults and they'll just AFK in the automated tournaments, and that will generate some gold. But again, there aren't that many people who do that, actually. It used to be a lot more prevalent, actually, back in the day. And I think Sneb was watching the NA monthly automated tournament. I think he watched 3 rounds in a row where one team was like ults, right? And was totally AFK. So it's a bit unfortunate that happens. Ben used to actually ban them. But unfortunately, Ben P is no longer at the company. So he can't do that. Or to be clear, actually, Ben didn't ban them directly, but, he reported them or whatever. He got it processed. Because devs can't ban people, guys, and therefore you shouldn't say, hey, Darkbringer, ban people. It's not how it works, actually. So yeah, just a quick
Did you know that Darkbringer is a big trader in the Overflow Discord?
Oh, I know. He's a gamer. That guy plays more than like 99% of the player base, actually. He's crazy. Yeah. He got called out in a Maguma thread the other day because because he plays on Maguma for World vs. World. And people were complaining about Maguma, and they said, oh yeah, ANET approve of this. They approve it. Because I saw this one guy who just, all he does is he unga-bunga fights players permanently. And yeah, it was 100% they were talking about Darkbringer, so I just thought that was pretty funny. Yeah, we actually have it here. Most of the ANET tags I've seen only want to fight in boon blobs, or the very specific one on Mag I saw last time. We will link with them. This punctuation doesn't exist here, by the way. With them that AFKs while taking a camp every few minutes. They never seem to care about the towers or keeps, just running around like Mag and unga bunga hit enemies.
What exactly constitutes an unga bunga hit? I have to know.
I don't know. I think
is he just doing that to like maintain his participation?
I guess so,
I would assume so. Yeah.
Like, there's better ways of doing that.
Yeah, he's blasting hard. You love to see it. But good news, everyone. I guess we solved AFK farming. Well done, everyone. I really appreciate that. It's all been cleared up. And I think you wanted to bring up the World vs. World stuff, actually, Enko, next. And seeing as we're actually on Maguma, we might as well go there now, actually. So, yeah, what were you going to bring up there?
Okay, so World vs. World. So patches are always, or that change the game, are always like a good time to make a lot of gold. World vs. World changes, like if they're adjusting the rewards, so they're adding in achievements or weekly achievements for 8 gold, and then you get skirmish tickets. So there's additional gold generation in the game, but they're also revamping how some of the point system works to try and encourage more people to play. If more people get into World vs. World, it should hopefully it will cause some swings in the economy. It'll kind of spur some things to change a little bit. World vs. World actually used to drive the economy more than raids did because you have a lot more people doing it, and you have all these people gearing up for it. Plus, World vs. World players generally didn't have Ascended gear, so they usually were buying a lot of stuff. So if more people are going into World vs. World to get these new rewards, it might actually cause some prices on runes and sigils changes to happen. But it'll be interesting to see. Like, especially, hopefully, we're going to get an update on alliances, and ease of access for World vs. World is probably the big thing that should be coming soon.
Very cool.
Yeah, I think actually, yeah, I do feel like if they can fix and find a way to actually make WW work now, it probably would be the biggest thing they could do. Because like you said, Enko, like a lot of World vs. World players would actually have to spend a lot of their time getting Ascended by actually just crafting it. There's very little of them actually even engaged in anything in PvE or anything like that. And it's not even just that. It's because like I would say the best guild experience, if you're very into it, is a WW guild. I think there's nothing like a WW guild, because these are people who will raid 4 or 5 times a week, 2 to 3 hours each night. They're going out there. They're hitting people and sometimes clouding them, whatever it is. And these people are constantly changing their builds. They're changing their scenario. They're changing their comp, everything. And it's like they're spending gold and trying to find a way to get maybe certain member, like, hey, can you play this class? We need to fund you for this class, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, that does really help so much, because they're actively doing that, right? It's always, whenever there was a change, it was immediately people are theory crafting the next day, the next hour. And I think they really need to find a way to bring that back, bring that whole activity. Because I think, yeah, if you haven't played World vs. World, you need to go get into a guild that's purely a WW guild. They just raid 3-4 times a week, sometimes 5 times a week, and just see what it's like, how they, just get together 3 hours, they have fun, whether you're 5, 10, 20 people, and just see how that all happens with other guilds and friends that you have from different people in the same server. And yeah, you will spend money. You'll spend a lot of money in terms of Ascended gear and all of that. So I do feel like if they bring that back, it will bring a lot of that sort of spending that is not there now. Not to say that it's on a very low level as it is right now. I think it's just not what it used to be, at least 2015, 2016 days. So if they can find ways to make alliances work, that will honestly be a big fundamental change to the economy. Huge fundamental change.
So it does behoove you, if you are in a high-end World vs. World group that changes their strategies a lot, to get legendary gear, legendary sigils, legendary runes, because you change your builds a lot. Just like if you do a lot of raids, you do a lot of strikes, and you constantly want to stay at the edge of the meta, like you always want to stay at the forefront of everything, your costs are going to be reduced in the long run if you get that, because you're never replacing your gear. So high initial cost, it'll eventually pay itself off in the long run. So, but a lot of new players going into World vs. World, if they actually do it right, they actually get the reward system balanced right, they actually get the point system balanced right, so people will want to defend, people will want to fight players. Like, you still have blobs, you still have PPT, but it's done in a better way. It could actually drive the economy for quite a bit. Like, the only recurring costs you have at this point are consumables, like the food pots that people put out, and then like some people use consumables, which I would like to see legendary food or infinite food pots also, but that's another thing.
Oh, that's very interesting, actually, especially seeing as, of course, this probably maybe a little bit is going to be a pretty big year for World versus World, as we're seeing these changes, the iterative reward changes and systems changes, but also alliances, which I imagine is going to really cause a surge of new players into the game. So it's very interesting to hear that actually that could be really a big driving force in the economy as well, which that's very cool stuff. On that topic, do you think the absence of new runes and sigils with Ender Dragons was a detriment to kind of some of the economy stuff that was happening there as well? Because that was one thing that I was actually a little bit excited about. I was quite disappointed that we didn't actually get any new rune options with the expansion whatsoever. So I wonder if maybe that at some point they would introduce more, or potentially even look at the system. Because honestly, runes are a bit weird right now because you still need 6 of them, but realistically, it's not like you're ever going to use 3 runes. In fact, it's probably a bit of a confounding factor that the rune system is the way it is currently because, well, look, I happen to know that sometimes players choose to run 1 rune for each of the human gods, right? The Pantheon setup, right? And a bunch of other, setups where they only use 1 rune or no runes at all. So I think maybe a look at that system and the upgrade system in general could actually be very interesting, I imagine, because you mentioned that, you want to craft these runes, you want to create a lot of these upgrades for different scenarios and different builds and so on. So what do you think about that? New runes?
It would be cool, actually, now that you mention it, to see, instead of 6-piece sets, to see like 3-piece sets where you mix and match, and maybe you get more of a, rather than just you get some extra stats and then the last one you get a tangible benefit that's like maybe gameplay affecting. It would be interesting to see them release like 3 rune sets where you can have 2 different sets of runes, 3 each, and get 2 effects that actually affect how you play the game and maybe give less stats. Might be more interesting for specialist roles in PvE, and then obviously PvP, world versus world. You have more opportunities there, I think.
If
But
they don't,
definitely weird to not release any runes.
if they don't change the rune system, why not just make it like PvP where you select 1 rune and then there's your set? Because can you guys ever think of any reason why you would not run a full set of superior runes? There's no reason to. So why not just make it like PvP where you select whatever one it is and that's the one you have, and you don't have to deal with buying 6 of them. Them not releasing profession runes for EOD, I thought was weird. I think they just didn't want to do it because they didn't want to deal with it. But it's a matter of consistency. Like you had it with HRT, you had it with POF, but we didn't get Virtuoso runes. We didn't get Vindicator runes. So it's just kind of weird. And I can see why they didn't do it because like there's a lot of runes that aren't used that are really bad. And I also don't know why some of them are selling around either. But like if you look at power builds, how many runes do you ever use for power builds in PvE? It's like Scholar, Thief, maybe Flame Legions for like a specific build. There's a ton of other there's a ton of other runes that are for power builds, but they suck. Basically because it's become just which one gets the most stats, which one has the biggest damage modifier. On Kandi's side, you have a little bit more variety because you have different runes that affect different builds. And it's also up in the air sometimes which one's better than the other, so testing has to be done. And then it comes in the case where this one's better in this situation, this one's better in another situation. So there's more play with Kandi, which is why you see more variety. This is true with sigils too, actually, for Kandi. So they could make the upgrade system be a little more diverse and more interesting so that we're always not just using this exact same upgrades. But that's also going to be really hard to balance, I would say. But it would be nice if like power just wasn't always using Scholar and it wasn't just using Thief if you needed precision. So
of course, a little off topic, but I actually completely agree with that. Yeah, leaning into the special effect rather than just the stat stick component of runes definitely would be a lot more interesting, I think. Because you're completely correct, of course. This, essentially you pick the rune that has the best stats on it, right? And it's not the 6th bonus is, I guess, the most interesting part, but in some sense it's not enough to leverage your build around the 6th bonus, right? Like realistically you're going to be looking at the whole package rather than something else. So yeah, I certainly do miss the days when you do stuff like 4 nightmare runes and 2 trapper runes, or you would have, you mix in some altruism runes with durability runes for the different 4 and 2 bonuses, stuff like that. I think that was almost like the original vision of the system, but ArenaNet streamlined it to make it a bit easier to understand, I guess. But yeah, now we live in the world of, I guess I'm gonna play Force and Impact Sigil on like every build and Scholar runes. Like, unlucky.
Can somebody tell me who's using Daredevil runes?
I think it might be a world versus world thing, actually. So you get a crit every dodge, right? I think.
Yeah, after you dodge, you crit.
Yeah. I can see that. Seeing some playing world versus world, maybe.
Like Hollowsmith.
I think you have Selly gear in world versus world. Why do you need Daredevil runes? right? Like,
Yeah, like Dragon Hunter runes, Herald runes. I could see Revenant, I could see Firebrand, but there are some runes that are like actually profitable to craft, actually really profitable to craft right now, and they actually sell, and I don't understand why. Like some of them are just so stupid. It's like, why would anybody be using this?
yeah. Vindicator. Ah, yes. Yeah, that does make sense, actually. Although Intelligent Sigil is so insane in World vs. World, right? Like, or Sigil of Vision, rather. That Sigil is crazy, actually. It just gives you 100% crit for 3 seconds, I think. It's wild. It's wild. But yeah, I could definitely see it on, like, funny enough, on a Daredevil in World vs. World, right? To get those massive crits while still being relatively durable with, like, Valkyrie gear or something like that. Or, yeah, something that dodges a lot. It's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, so this is why we talked about, when I mentioned earlier, World versus World
yeah,
actually drives a lot of the economy, because you have all these options that may be more useful in this.
And it's a bit mushier, right? It's a bit of a mushier game mode.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Whereas in PvE, it's kind of like, well, this is the obvious choice, right? You know, it's a lot more like, okay, this is what we're doing. This is obviously the correct choice. Whereas in World versus World, the game mode's very sandboxy. So there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can approach it. And that leads to a lot of extra little micro decisions that, of course, you know, yeah, very interesting to think about, right? Of course, have an impact on the economy as players want to pick up certain items and gear sets that otherwise maybe you wouldn't.
Well, it's also because of the frequency, right, of testing out new things, right? And because you're figuring out different things work for different situations as well. And a lot of it, you know, maybe doesn't get implemented, and let's say that guild runs with that specific comp. But some of it is just to test, right? You got to test to see if it works or it doesn't work. And because, like you said, no situation is kind of clear cut. It's kind of, you have to react to the situation, and it's quick decision making, right? You can't really be like, yeah, no, this will be the obvious choice. I go here, just kill this, and then hopefully the whole Zerg falls. No, like you have to pretty much engage and actually try to read the enemy. And for this, it creates all these viable or not viable, these variety of options where you can look at different scenarios where some things like these are applicable, and then they go and spend to see if that works or not. So yeah, I do hope they release alliances this year. You know, I've been really waiting for this game mode.
Yeah,
a lot of people, but you know, I told you
lots of
we
guilds
need
to buy. Lots of guilds to buy for MM. He's ready.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. Listen, TeaTime. If they ever release a tournament, my dream in this game to be a two-time, two-region champion. All right, on EU and on NA.
Big.
Okay, and we already luckily have two guilds, one on NA, one on EU. They're called Hardstuck.
Yeah, we'll see about that. We'll see what we can do. You know, we'll join Maguma. That's going to be the key. That's the key alliance, right? That is the key, Hardstuck Maguma alliance. That's where it's going to get exciting.
Sandra Atreus brings up a good point. So they recently made a change with Hero Panel UI, where if you didn't have stats on a legendary item, you get that little exclamation mark that tells you, oh, you don't have stats selected on a piece of gear. And they added, like, you can see which specific one, because sometimes it sucked to try to like go through your entire hero panel to find which one was missing. They don't give you any kind of indicator if you don't have an upgrade installed, if you don't have a rune or a sigil. They should add that too.
There you have it. That sounds like a good idea, right? Like pushing as many people towards key in-game systems is a good idea.
Again, ArenaNet needs to iterate on their ideas. They have a lot of good things. They just need to
they got to keep doing
through.
Yeah. I actually think that this is a pretty good place to actually start thinking about wrapping things up. I think we've had a great discussion here and covered basically everything that I wanted to bring up. So before we kind of wrap things up then, any kind of closing statements or additional points that you guys want to bring up, anything that we've missed, or just some interesting facts about the economy in general?
I would just tell anyone that's like worried about anything to, you know, orient themselves towards what they like doing in the game and figure out how you can make gold doing that. I think that's the easiest way to make gold while playing the game, while enjoying yourself, not making it a chore, not making it a job. Some people like to say it's a second job if you do this. Just like, don't do that then. Find something else.
It's a good point. You know, it's very important, and I think it's perhaps something that a lot of players miss. That, as you very correctly pointed out, I think earlier in the show, is that you can pretty much make good gold, decent gold per hour doing any activity you want in the game, more or less. As long as as long as you're getting engaging with the reward system in some way, you can pretty much get it done. There's a whole bunch of things you can do that are all very rewarding, and you can get towards your goals pretty nicely. Anyone else? Any other comments? Well, actually,
would you like 10 subscribers? Would you like 10 subs?
Yeah. Put in all the plugs. Put in all the plugs.
Oh yeah. Don't worry, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. We've always got to make it happen. But I love 10 subs. The more subs, the better. The more, the merrier when it comes to subs. To be honest. But I guess I'll kind of close out with a question that I'm super curious about. This might be almost impossible to answer, actually. So don't worry if it's like not even an answerable question. I'm very curious as to how large the Guild Wars 2 economy is, because I've always thought that it's pretty colossal, actually, and very difficult to impact. We kind of saw this with the Duplicator, right? You know, the Duplicator, even with the full force of a duping exploit, honestly, didn't really dent the Guild Wars 2 economy perhaps as much as you'd expect with like, the whole Mystic Coin thing. Even that dissolved pretty quickly. Like, how much gold do you think is generated per day, right, by all the players, for example? Or, like, how much gold is there in circulation, if that's even possible to quantify approximately?
I don't think it's possible to quantify. Maybe efficiency could, if they wanted to, could make some sort of tool that gives a decent idea. Yeah. I will say that, like, one of the things that Reddit loves to come up with is the idea that, like, oh, prices are the way they are on any particular item at any given time, because it's being manipulated by someone. and I can say that's just, with the trading post tax and the way that everything works, it's just not true. Like, propping up or moving any sort of price, like, you get crushed by the weight of, like, the aggregate like value of all that item. Like, it takes an obscene amount of gold. So it's definitely very robust. It's definitely bigger than I think people realize.
If you had to go ahead. Yeah.
That's something that whoever the economist or whoever's like got that as part of their portfolio now, that, and as well as like tracking certain items, it's actually something I think that they should do, like, just so they can keep their finger on the pulse of the economy. Like, the entire thing with the duping could have been prevented if they had just kept a simple tracker that just showed, hey, there's 500 chalks in the game this day, and the next day there were 600 chalks. It's like, okay, we already know the drop rates. This would also allow them to like check drop rates and like maybe adjust them if they're like, oh, only one's being generated every 5 weeks. Maybe we need to adjust it. Like, they should actually do that kind of stuff, and they should do that for gold too. And that would be an interesting metric for them to release. Like, I miss the info. Those info posts they used to do. It's like, oh, this many things were killed. This how many players were killed by raptors and stuff like that. I kind of wish that ArenaNet would do that more. And one of the interesting things would be like, this much gold was generated. This much like how many ectos were produced since EOD launched. Like, stuff like that I think would actually be kind of cool. But can we make an estimate on that? Not really. Like, efficiency is not a huge percentage of the player base. It's probably some of the more active players, but we have no tools available to the player base to actually be able to estimate something like that. We can make approximations, but it's nowhere near accurate because we don't have enough data. But ArenaNet does. And since they didn't have an economist for like 2 or 3 years, they probably don't have any kind of those tools built up.
Okay. If you had to just give it a full guess, with disclaimer attached that it is a guess, like what kind of number would you ballpark it? Just out of curiosity. $1 billion gold.
I'd say somewhere maybe around like 10 million, something like that, in like total liquid value, counting items and stuff. Thinking about the number of daily logins, I think, is about like 500K, and then you have to imagine maybe half of those people just logged in and that's it. And then, a smaller subset do fractals, and so yeah.
Well, let's see. Okay. If we try to base it off of number of unID'd gears being sold on the trading post each day,
oh god,
how much gold comes out of that? Because there's actually a limit on how much comes in. Like, not enough comes in, honestly.
Enko is literally the definition of man. I'm gated by the community not farming
Yeah,
enough.
they don't
and
farm
that
hard
limits my
enough.
gold income.
Yeah.
I am. I actually, you
They
know
don't,
what?
they
I
don't
wish
farm
the
hard
AFK
enough for him to make
farmers,
more money.
I wish the AK farmers would farm in level 80 zones because then they would generate unID gears.
Oh my god.
They'd make more gold doing that than farming like tier 3 mats.
Oh god.
That's big. Oh, do you have a guess on the daily gold generated?
I could probably see 500, 750k a day.
Okay.
Oh, that's it?
Raw gold, yeah, just raw gold.
Oh, raw
gold.
okay, okay.
Raw gold.
Oh yeah. What about like with materials as well then? You know, not just the raw gold.
I
Probably
think
2
it'd be
million more.
5 to 10. That's probably
5 to
a
10
ballpark.
mil is what
Yeah.
what you reckon?
Give or take.
Okay. Well, that's quite a lot of gold. Yeah,
Well,
that's
so the
pretty
problem
big.
with materials, they don't actually get value until you sell them, until you exchange them for gold.
Mhm.
So if all the materials being generated, like if we want to say how much silk was being generated a day, you can make an approximation on that. But if all that silk was sold that day on the trading post, silk would immediately go down to vendor value. It would get to the point where you're just selling to the vendor instead, right? So everything in this, that's actually a problem with this game's economy, is that everything is always done relative to raw gold. That's why whenever we talk about farming, it's always done gold per hour. It's not done, we're not talking about silk per hour. We're always talking about gold per hour because we're always relating everything back to gold. So that's why I would probably try to make a better estimate on like raw gold generated, and then because that gives you how much you could purchase, like how many materials you could purchase a day. With the prices and stuff like that.
So 750k raw gold a day, and then we reckon around 5 to 10 mil in terms of, well, you know, kind of value-ish in items. And there you go.
Yeah.
That's pretty big.
Not including Lunar New Year, because at that point it's worse.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Not measuring income in onions per hour. Yeah, we definitely forgot onions. Yeah.
So for those of you guys wondering, Lunar New Year's, if you are buying your 8 envelopes every day, you get 2.4 raw gold.
Oh yeah,
2.4 raw gold per account. So if you got 100 accounts, you're making, you're making 240 raw gold a day just doing that. And if you're like Teapot, who's got
happy
now?
teapot noises.
If you actually did that, it's 480 gold profit a day if you did it every day for Lunar New Year's. So
kind of a similar topic there, just to quickly kind of round things off then, because I think this is something that also does come up. A bit similar to the AFK farming thing, right? Do you think that alt account abuse is significant? Because I imagine there also aren't a crazy amount of people going like full unhinged, right? I imagine the amount of people who have alts are a bit of a drop in the ocean compared to like all of the login rewards in the game, right? Overall, I'd say. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I mean, if you had like Teapot, do you actually buy your envelopes?
I don't know. I don't do the. I know some people who do. I know a guy who does envelopes on 200 accounts. Yeah.
Yeah. So somebody mentioned, well, you can actually get 11 envelopes a day. Well, you get 8 from the vendor, which you can do in 3 seconds. Nobody's going to do those other 3 envelopes on 200 accounts because it takes time.
Yeah, that's a lot of investment, right? You've got to be. I mean, you could obviously speed it up with multi-boxing and stuff like that, and you can be somewhat efficient, but I mean, that's pretty brutal, right? Yeah, but yeah, Bloodborne said he did 600 accounts at one point. This is one of the biggest alt account abusers, I guess, that I'm aware of, actually. But yeah, it's pretty significant, guys. You know, it's impressive. It's impressive.
Yeah, so that's the raw gold being generated per account if you do the envelopes. So people who are saying they're buying from other players, again, we're talking about just how much gold's being generated in the game, which is why they had to add the Magic Find cap. Because before, divine envelopes were producing like 1.7 raw gold.
Well, and they halved them as well. You used to get 16 too. So yeah.
Was it 16 at one point?
Yeah, it was 16.
Oh, yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was 16. So they nerfed Magic Finder and they nerfed the amount you could get as well at the same time. Or not at the same time, but in a similar sequence. Yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah.
Delete the game.
Yeah, delete the game. Guild Wars 2 is dead. It's the apocalypse. Sell everything now. Your gold is worthless, and MM's going to take all of it. So that's the closing thoughts there. And I think that's a great place to wrap up. So thank you so much to my wonderful guest. Thanks for watching. And there's a brief moment in time where, okay, instead of selling materials on the trading post, we get to Sell ourselves. That sounds a little bit weird, actually. It doesn't sound quite right. But you know what? We're just going to go with it.
No.
A brand new...
We're not ERPing in Divinity's Breach right now.
Yeah, that's a whole different type of earning gold. Okay, that's a little bit different. But anyway, so let's go ahead and start off with our wonderful new guest. It is the Money Lord. I think 120k gold in the wallet, I believe, has been shown. It is Abri. Where can we find you? What are you up to?
You can find me on YouTube, just Abri, and I play the game, and I sometimes make videos about things in the game, mostly gold oriented.
There you go. Okay,
That's
and of
about
course, we've got links in the chat right now. We've got ! hosts. We'll link everyone. I fixed it. The bot forgot who MM was, but I reminded the bot who MM was. There it is. And in fact, yeah.
Just for that. I'll give you 10 subs.
There it is. So you've got to earn it, right? You've got to earn it. But yeah, next up, while he's ready to gift those subs here, it is MM, the Infusion Gatekeeper, the mustachioed villain of Guild Wars 2, World versus World Overlord. MM, when are you coming back? You've been gone. MM's busy. He's doing real life. He's too busy jetting around the world, okay, flexing on all of us on Twitter and Instagram. This guy's unbelievable. When are you coming back to flex on us in game?
Soon. I actually plan to maybe stream sometime this week. But yeah, I've been gone. I've been busy. I family business, and I also opened up my own businesses. An actual oil baron. So there you go. Yeah, you can find me on the internet and stuff. Guild MM somewhere. Just search it. I'll probably pop up. And that's really it. I'll be back soon. I don't know, but hopefully this week. And yeah, next time I'll plan to come to the UK. I'll go fly out to London, and then I'll text you. I'll go find you. I tried to find you the last time I was in London.
Yeah, well,
I found pizza.
Well, that'll do, I guess. That's a decent substitute, I suppose, at least for a while. And finally, we have the Ecto Lord, the master of unidentified gear, the gatherer of chacks, the Four Winds wizard. It is Enko.
So I'm going to be starting streaming again more. I kind of took a break since November, IRL stuff. I'm starting to use Twitter more too, which is a interesting experience. Yeah. Hopefully I'll be getting a little more regular on Twitch, just because I've been working on IRL stuff recently. Been doing a lot of stuff with like the stream overlays, getting some automation stuff done on there, but been trying to find a new job. So the ArenaNet economy position didn't come through. So yeah. I should be starting a new job tomorrow, actually, but that's only a temporary thing for the military, the Navy reserves. By the way, 4 wins. If you guys are looking, probably next month is probably when you should start buying materials up.
Boom. Last minute.
Do it on an alt account. Just buy all the materials and don't pick them up so you have space.
That's big, actually. MM with the 10 gifted subs as well. 883 gifted subs. Okay, that's big. I am owned by MM. That's actually a true story right there. But anyway, yeah, speaking of me, here, you can follow the stream. You can subscribe. There's a million more tea times to come. I'm going to try and keep it going weekly. We're on a good streak for a while. We started off the year being slightly more organized. Make sure to check out these wonderful hosts. Thank you so much for hopping on board, gentlemen. It was a really good show, actually super interesting. And I'm sure that the chat and comments will appreciate it. Let us know what you think under the video here on YouTube. If you happen to be there, make sure you like the video. Make sure you watch all the other videos. Okay, but that is going to be just about it from us today. Make sure to follow everyone, follow me, come back and watch every single day, watch all the videos, watch all their videos, follow Enko on Twitter, okay? And, I don't know, just get to, what do you do these days? Cancel him? I don't know. Just get on that, make sure that happens. But that's it. Thank you much for watching, my friends. Thank you very much. We will see you next time. I'll be back in just a moment. Ooh.